undeniably in the top 10.
Best player in the NFL is Joe Burrow.
No.
He's never made it to the Super Bowl.
Ravens had the worst defense in the NFL for 9 weeks.
He's got 2 quarterbacks in just the AFC that don't even respect him.
Lamar Jackson's probably one of the most respected players.
Lamar Jackson is Mr. October, and in football, that's not a great thing. You got to be Mr. January, and he has never been that.
Give me 10 quarterbacks over Lamar Jackson.
If you put Baker Mayfield on the Ravens.
Do you believe that in your heart?
This is why he's not in the Super Bowl right now. Congratulations.
Welcome to One Fan vs. 10 Haters. We have Jack Settleman, Ravens superfan, in the building, who will be taking on 10 of Lamar Jackson's biggest haters. How you feeling about that?
What could you hate that man for?
All right, our first prompt. Lamar Jackson is the best player in the NFL.
If you're going to say he's the best player in the NFL, yet he hasn't won anything meaningful, how can you make that argument that he's the best player in the NFL?
Is Jalen Hurts the second best player in the NFL right now?
I mean, I would say Patrick Mahomes is the best player in the NFL simply because he's won Super Bowls. Also, he's won MVPs.
But Jalen Hurts has made it to 2 Super Bowls in the last 3 years. So is the quarterback's team success dependent strictly on the quarterback? Or, like, I'm trying to figure out what your metric is for analyzing.
The quarterback is the most important position on the team.
Agreed.
So if you're going to look at that, you're going to look at Lamar Jackson. Yes, he's been great in the regular season. No one's denying that. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to winning important games, being the best player to take your team to the next level, he is astoundingly bad. 4-12, more turnovers than touchdowns. You cannot argue that he's terrible in big game situations.
So what do you qualify as a big game? Because you're hand-picking what games.
Any game in the playoffs.
Okay, he's only played the Steelers in the playoffs 1 time, and he absolutely dunked on them the last time. Then he played the Houston Texans last year. He absolutely dunked on them in that game. So the new version of Lamar Jackson has actually been pretty solid.
Has he ever made it to the Super Bowl?
No.
So how can you say that he's the best player in the NFL? He's never made it to the Super Bowl.
Is Jimmy Garoppolo the best player in the NFL? Like, once again, is that how we're gauging it?
I mean, I believe in order to have the crown of the best player in the NFL, you need to take your team to the next level. Lamar has not yet done that. And more turnovers than touchdowns in games when it counts.
No, that's your metric for what game counted.
We're talking about playoff Lamar.
But you're not referencing playoff stats.
I'm just saying
you're just handpicking games.
He has yet to take his team to the Super Bowl, so you cannot call him the best.
Okay.
Let's be honest. Lamar Jackson is Mr. October, and in baseball and in football, that's not a great thing. You got to be Mr. January, and he has never been that. You want to talk about highlights? You know what I think about? When Lamar threw it into triple coverage to Likely, thinking that he was going to get a flag from the refs. That's what he was counting on, the referees to go his way? Unacceptable. Do you know that Dak Prescott has a better passer rating in the playoffs than Lamar Jackson? 92 compared to 75? Absolutely not. Lamar, you want to know why people love Lamar Jackson? Yeah, he's Mr. Fantasy. He gets the most points fantasy the last 2 years. I call him the parlay quarterback. Now that legalized betting is cool, of course I love Lamar Jackson. He's on prime time all the time. I'm going to make a 4-leg parlay. He's going to go 50 yards. He's going to throw for 200. He's going to get a rushing touchdown and a passing touchdown. That doesn't matter because the great player, the best player, finds a way to win in January, and he has yet to take that. Let's talk about the strip sack. Let's talk about he hasn't done a butt fumble yet, but that's the career trajectory he's on.
Once again, team versus like his performance against the Bills, inexcusable in the first half. Would you agree with that? 2 turnovers.
Absolutely.
His performance in the second half, fantastic.
It got better, but it takes him a while to adapt.
He didn't need to adapt in the first game against Pittsburgh.
Okay, that's Pittsburgh against an aging Russell Wilson.
One of the best defenses in the league.
Granted, okay. He got one. Now he's 3-5 in the playoffs.
So play this game with me. Replace Patrick Mahomes with Lamar Jackson. You got Andy Reid as a play caller. You got Spags as a defensive play caller. How would Lamar do in the Chiefs system?
You can't prove that. He's probably gonna make a mistake just based on what he's done in the postseason.
Yeah.
He's gonna fumble. He's gonna miss a snap. He's gonna mess up somewhere just on what he's done.
Yeah. So who made the mistake in the second half of the game? Lamar fumbled the ball in the second half of the game. Lamar Jackson dropped a pass that hit him in the chest in the second half of the game.
Fair, okay. So let's put on Mark Andrews, not the guy who gets the ball every snap.
Well, that's just what happened. I'm not like making up a hypothetical. That's what happened.
He's taking the snap at center.
Yes.
It's always gonna be on him.
100%. But I'm saying put him on the Chiefs. Are they gonna win the Super Bowl? In your opinion?
He'll find a way to mess up.
I respect your opinion.
I respect yours.
All right, let's keep moving.
Can I just shoot something real
Yes.
quick? There's a reason he went to Louisville. Horses become legendary in Kentucky, not quarterbacks.
So how can Lamar Jackson be the best player in the NFL when he's got two quarterbacks in just the AFC that don't even respect him? His peers don't respect him because if you caught the hot mic, it was the 11th of November. You had Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes post-game talking about how they were going to see each other in the AFC Championship game. I'm sorry, but doesn't Lamar Jackson also play in the AFC?
He does.
So among peers,
So they don't respect him?
they were counting on
Yeah.
playing each other in the AFC Championship game when your Ravens, your Lamar Jackson's Ravens,
Yeah.
were expected to make the playoffs as well. They were totally discounting him. So he doesn't have any respect among his peers.
Lamar Jackson's probably one of the most respected players amongst his peers. You ask there was actually there was a player survey that said who's the most overrated player in the NFL, and it was Josh Allen. And that's when the players aren't speaking publicly. So behind closed doors, what are they saying? They're saying Lamar's awesome and Allen's overrated.
But they weren't speaking publicly. It was the two of them in the post game. They were shaking hands and they said,
Yeah.
"All right, see
Okay.
ya."
So if I said, I'll see you again soon, right, after this, wouldn't that make a lot of sense?
No, because we're never going to see each other again. Number one, and two, we won't have a date at the AFC Championship. Regardless, Lamar Jackson in his career in the postseason, in the playoffs, 7
What
years.
we're talking about
7
is
years.
Lamar Jackson the best player in the NFL now, not over his career.
Okay,
It's just such
okay.
a silly conversation.
It's not a silly conversation because if he wants to be the best player, if you
Okay.
want to call him the best
You-
player, let me finish.
Are you a
Let me
content
finish.
creator?
Let me finish.
Are you a content
I'm not.
creator?
Actually,
Okay.
I'm not.
Okay.
Okay.
What do you do in your life?
Hold
What
on
do you
a
do
second.
in your
No,
life?
no, no. Let me make my
If
point.
I reference
I'm gonna
something
make
you
my
did
point.
6 years
I'm gonna make my
ago,
point. Let me make
would
my
that-
point.
okay,
His
go.
career record in the playoffs: 3-5.
His career record in the playoffs under Todd Monken, 2-2.
Oh, okay. We're going to talk about coaches. Let's talk about coaches.
Sure.
The coach of the Ravens.
Yes.
Do you think Joe Flacco is anywhere near the skill set of Lamar Jackson?
No.
No. Okay. Well, Joe Flacco
Yeah.
won a Super Bowl
Yeah.
with the coach of the Ravens.
Yeah.
He threw 3 touchdowns in the Super Bowl. Lamar Jackson has never even thrown 3 touchdowns in a single game in the playoff in his career.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, that's right. I'm cooking. Let's go. That's right. Okay. So no. I mean, I agree with you, Lamar. And by the way, Lamar Jackson has all these single season accolades. You know how many? All of those that Joe Flacco has won? Yeah, like none of them. Not an MVP ever. None of the All Pro. Never. Pro Bowl.
What's the
Nothing.
point? What's the point? I
So-
know I'm
so-
a Ravens fan. I know
So if
Joe's
you're gonna
had
throw
more
out,
playoff
but if
success.
you're gonna throw out accolades, well then Joe Flacco has
Wait,
none.
I didn't throw it out.
Joe Flacco has no accolades, and he went and won a Super Bowl with the same coach that Lamar Jackson
Yeah,
has. So
yeah.
why can't Lamar do it?
Lamar can do it. He just hasn't yet.
Hasn't yet. Oh.
This-
So wait a second now.
Yeah.
And that drop that everybody wants to point to with Mark Andrews in the
Yeah.
end zone. Well, if Lamar Jackson actually did his job and didn't strip sack fumble on the seventh play of the second quarter,
Yeah.
they would have never potentially been in that situation
Agreed.
for Mark Andrews to have dropped that ball. That strip sack fumble put exactly 7 points on the board for the Buffalo Bills 4 plays later. And the Buffalo Bills never relinquished the lead after that.
Agreed.
You can retort, though.
It's just like 8 years ago at the start of his career, I was a senior in college. If you pin that stuff on me, I just feel like that would be funny. People grow, they get better, and this is the world's it's really sports media. They're obsessed with just stamping things in the moment, right? Lamar hasn't won it yet. Giannis had never won it. Michael Jordan hadn't won it. Remember when LeBron James hadn't won a title? It just takes time for some people. Not for Patrick Mahomes, but for everyone else. Josh Allen doesn't have a Super Bowl. Joe Burrow doesn't have a Super Bowl. There's 2 active starting quarterbacks in the NFL who have a Super Bowl. It's not just Lamar.
So we're saying the best player in the NFL,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
It's Patrick Mahomes. Let's not. I see what you're doing here. You're doing a great job, right? Doing a great job, kid. Lamar, we talk about this season. He had all of these weapons. Patrick Mahomes didn't have all these weapons. He had Zay Flowers. Hold on, let me finish. He had Zay Flowers. He had Likely. He had Mark Andrews. He had King Henry. He had Justin Hill. Who can you compare that to Patrick Mahomes right now?
So you're mentioning all these things, right?
Right.
Lamar had the better weapons. Mahomes didn't.
Yeah.
And in the season, regular season, who outplayed the other player?
Well, if you want to be honest, you say Patrick Mahomes outplayed him. Because if it was that true, he would be in the number 1 seed. Was the Ravens the number 1 seed? No. Were they the number 1 seed?
Ravens had the worst defense in the NFL for 9 weeks.
Oh, so you're making excuses for your best player in the NFL?
Is that an excuse or a fact?
Yeah, that's a fact. But
it is a
at the same time, where's Lamar right now?
When the Ravens didn't have the 32nd worst defense in the NFL, they won every single game.
Has he showed up in big games so far?
Define a big game.
The AFC Championship games that he played in 2019 and 2023. Did he show up?
He didn't play in 2019, but in
Yes, he did. 2020? Yes, he did.
in the AFC Championship.
Yes,
no.
he did. When he was an MVP?
It was divisional round, but in that game,
But who did he lose to in both of those games?
well,
Patrick Mahomes.
No, he lost to the Titans in 2019. He had 550 total
Oh,
yards.
the 9 and
in
7
the game.
Titans. The 9 and 7
Yeah.
Titans. Oh, okay. Okay. The best player lost to the 9 and 7 Titans.
But you said, did he show up? He had 550 yards in the game, and the Ravens had 7 drops in the game. Is that a Lamar Jackson
Correct,
problem?
but he didn't show up. Did they win? Did they win that game? That's all I want to know. Did they win that game?
I think you know the answer to that.
Yeah, we both know the answer to that,
Yeah.
and that's why he's not the best player.
Okay. That's
Even
good.
right now. Okay, he rushed for what?
did-
900 plus yards this year?
Sure.
And he threw for how much? 4,000 plus?
Yeah. First player ever.
Patrick Mahomes done that for about, let's
Nope,
say,
nope.
6 seasons.
Lamar
Passing yards?
Lamar-
Passing yards.
But you just referenced the rushing.
Okay, rushing yards. Okay, he rushed for over
And then-
900.
Yes.
Name one player that's won a Super Bowl that rushed that much. I'll close my eyes. Nobody.
So you're just saying he'll never win a Super Bowl because he's a mobile quarterback?
I said he needs to improve his game. Maybe work on the passing than just,
Like leading
rushing.
the NFL in touchdown passes? Or
Yeah, we could scratch our head, but as we scratch my head, I look at here, Patrick has 3 to your 0. Have a good day, y'all. See ya.
Lamar Jackson is a top 10 quarterback of all time.
You know I'm right. I like that.
That's right. Say my first rodeo. Okay. Give me your top 10 quarterbacks of all time.
What are we basing it off of? Because if we're going to do
Okay,
accolades,
we
I'm
have-
just going to,
okay, so
I'm not
it's-
having the
It's
conversation.
a congregate of statistical, like longevity,
Okay.
winning. Even though winning is a team accolade, winning is important to mix in here because, years ago, somebody like a Matthew Stafford would have never been put in this discussion. Meanwhile, that Super Bowl that he won a couple of years ago, for some people, one Super Bowl is good enough. Aaron Rodgers, me being a Jets fan, only has 1 Super Bowl win, right? He's got a lot of
Let's
NFC
just be
championship.
clear. You have 0 Super Bowl wins. as a
Yeah,
Jets
I
fan.
understand that. It's miserable. You definitely do have it a little bit better than me. But what I'm saying, though, is that sometimes one ring can kind of validate the greatness of a player, right? So in the case of Lamar Jackson, who's never going to win a ring, in the event that he does, maybe you could put him in the top 10, right? But as it stands right now, what real argument do you have to put him in the top 10?
So I think the prompt is Lamar Jackson a top 10 quarterback of all time? So there's a lot of,
Right.
It depends what you're measuring on. I'll admit, if you're doing it off of accolades, if you're doing it off longevity, it's going to be difficult for him to be in the top 10 if he's only playing the league for 7 years. You're kind of ending his career when others got 8, 10 more years to play. So if I want to say he's a top 10 player of all time, I like to think of, there's just from a skill standpoint and from a performance standpoint, and acknowledging that the athletes and the players in 2024 and 2025 are at a level that the 1980s players could never touch. And what I mean by that is, like, Dan Marino is going to have better long-term stats, better longevity, but, like, let's be real. Like, put freaking Brock Purdy in that era, and he's probably dicing him up. The same way we say MJ used to play against plumbers, MJ is not the athlete that Anthony Edwards is today.
Okay, so we're talking
But-
about
but if-
football, by the way.
I
Just wanna
understand, but
bring
I'm
it
just
back
saying. So if you take an athlete, Barry Sanders, he might be Isaiah Pacheco. The athletes
We're
are just-
talking quarterbacks, not running backs.
but I'm saying, if you want to look at, like, who are the 10 greatest players to ever put on the shoulder pads and play the position, he's undeniably in the top 10.
Undeniably.
Undeniably. It's
I
not
don't know
even, so
about
give me
that. I
10
don't know
give me
about
10
that.
quarterbacks over Lamar Jackson all
Over
time.
Lamar
Yeah.
Jackson all time. Peyton Manning.
Okay.
Tom Brady.
Okay.
I'm going to put Dan Marino. Even though Dan Marino did not win a ring, he was outstanding for his era. And in an era over the course of, we'll say, the last 10 to 15 years, maybe outside of this season, in a passing era, Marino thrives.
Okay.
I will put Rodgers. I will put John Elway. I will put Patrick Mahomes. Five Super Bowl appearances in 6 years,
yeah.
3 championships. That makes a difference, right? So right off the bat, I gave you 6 names, right? I think that's fair, and we can debate the other names here. For me personally, it's like I value longevity, right? I value a guy like Matthew Stafford in this era, right?
Matthew Stafford's better than Lamar Jackson.
I like Brett Favre. Brett Favre is a similar. There you go. They love it too.
Okay.
But now, again,
You
like,
need two more.
To
You need
your
two more
point,
names.
how much weight are we holding the previous era, right? If we're talking previous era, the guys like Troy Aikman and Roger Staubach and Terry Bradshaw, we can debate maybe they weren't individually as talented as Lamar Jackson, but multiple time Super Bowl winners.
Sure.
We have to get Lamar Jackson there once. You cannot put him in any top 10 list until we get to that point.
But you did with Dan Marino. Have a good day.
All right, valiant effort. Next.
Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Brett Favre, Patrick Mahomes.
Yep.
Which one of those guys had to bring on the greatest running back of all time to their team to try and make it to the Super Bowl? And they still didn't make it to the Super Bowl. That was Lamar Jackson this year. They had to bring on Derrick Henry, basically the greatest running back of all time, and they could not even make it to the conference championship. You're saying to me, if Tom Brady added on a Derrick Henry, he would have gone undefeated yet again.
So I'm confused. A top 10 player of all time can't have a top teammate?
I'm saying when you're looking at the top 10 quarterbacks of
Yeah.
all time,
So-
you don't
so
remember
Pey-
you don't remember the running backs. Who was the running back on the Broncos when the Broncos won the Super Bowl?
So does Marvin Harrison with Peyton Manning count?
I mean, you could say that about Mark Andrews. You could say that about. I'm not talking about receivers. I'm talking about they brought on Derrick Henry
So
to
you're
try
saying
and
it's-
win a Super Bowl. They couldn't even make the conference championship
you're saying-
with Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. You have Derrick Henry on your team, man.
So you're saying it's more valuable to have a star running back as a quarterback than a star like wide receiver or tight end?
I mean, regardless, there's still star tight ends on the Ravens. Mark Andrews, Zay Flowers.
Zay Flowers didn't play in the playoffs,
Okay, but he played during the regular season.
and they were awesome. They had the best DVOA offense of all time.
I'm just saying this. How many wins this year do you think the Ravens would have had without Derrick Henry?
12?
I mean, I think that's
Lamar Jackson-
unbelievable to say.
Wait, based on what? Because Lamar Jackson is the winningest regular season quarterback of all time, and he's never had Derrick Henry. But now with Derrick Henry, he's worth 4 or 5 wins to the team.
I'm just
Explain
saying,
that.
nobody-
So he went 14-2. His star running back was Mark Ingram. He went 12-5. He had Gus Edwards. He went 13-4. He had J.K. Dobbins. But it was Derrick Henry who changed the team this year.
I'm just saying they tried to bring on Derrick Henry in order to make a Super Bowl. They could not even make it to the conference championship.
No, I know. I was.
All right, it ain't
We
worth
all
it.
watched.
It's not worth it.
Yeah.
It's not worth it.
I feel like we watched that game.
The reason that he will never get there is because he has all of the things you can't teach. He has talent. He has that it factor, that X factor that you really can't teach. But I just feel like he's not taking care of the stuff you can teach, like learning the book, checking out all your reads before you decide that you're going to run for it. And I think it matters way more to him to prove that you can be a top 10 quarterback of his style than it is to concede a little bit, learn some reads, learn some plays in order to take that team to the Super Bowl. I think it's more important to him personally to prove all those doubters wrong, that he should have been a wide receiver or whatever, than it is to take his team and lead his team to the Super Bowl, which he needs to be considered for that top 10 conversation.
Yeah, the biggest knock on Lamar in the AFC Championship last year and then all through the season this year was he actually wasn't running enough. So his mom had to get on the phone with him and tell him he should run a little bit more. And he publicized that at a press conference. So I don't really think it makes a ton of sense to say he, doesn't really make reads. We know Lamar's at a point in his career where he's gone first read, second read. So I just don't find any of that to be very true.
Do you think that he could stand to be a little bit more cerebral when it comes to running the huddle and being a leader of the team in the huddle rather than being like, physically, I'm going to get it done for you?
I don't think he's just like a go out and do it guy personally.
Well, to quote the young Dakota Fanning, to the late, great Brittany Murphy in Uptown Girls. Fundamentals are the building blocks of fun. And everyone will say that he is having so much fun, but I just don't feel like he's trying hard enough to study and take care of it. I just don't see that from him.
All right. Appreciate it.
Lamar Jackson got to hit the books. Lamar Jackson deserves the 2024 NFL MVP.
He has 2 already. Does he really need a third one?
No, he doesn't.
No.
But
It's a little greedy now, right?
yeah. A little
But
bit.
can we debate this
Sure.
for this one moment? Can we give it to a running back this year? Can we have a running back be MVP? If it's not Saquon, why not his own teammate, Derrick Henry?
What's your definition of an MVP?
Most valuable player.
Okay.
What they do on the field, of course. If you just sit here, you're just gonna say, "Oh well, Lamar had the best stats." Not really. He did pass for 4,000 yards and he rushed for 900. We get that point. You don't want to bring the playoffs? Hey, we get that point too. But besides that, it's always quarterback. What about the running back? What about the wide receivers?
They're just not more valuable. I think you know that.
So they're not more valuable, but this is a team sport.
But
Does he score all the points?
No.
No.
Does Saquon?
Saquon does it, but he scored most of them.
Well, let's see. Saquon had 16 rushing touchdowns.
Correct.
Jalen Hurts, his own teammate, had 14.
Yeah, something called the tush push. I could. You throw me in there for 1 yard, I'm gonna push it down.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying.
Lamar Jackson had 44 touchdowns.
Congratulations to him.
Well, you're just saying that.
Congratulations to
that
him.
You. Okay.
So what are you saying? You want him to be MVP again?
I think
You would love it. You would love to see it happen, right?
No, it doesn't really affect me.
Okay.
I think that he's gonna win it. I think he should win it. I think everyone in Baltimore knows that us as a fan base, we just want to see him win the Super Bowl MVP. But I don't think running backs are more valuable than quarterbacks. And if that's the definition of an MVP to you, then a running back shouldn't win the MVP. That's all.
This is why he's not in the Super Bowl right now. Congratulations.
The Ravens are holding Lamar Jackson back.
So Lamar Jackson said when he wins a Super Bowl, he's going to switch his jersey number to the number 1.
Yes.
Looking at your jersey, it still says 8. What's the reason? Is it the Ravens holding Lamar Jack, or is it Lamar holding the Ravens back? Let's look at how this team has tried to build for Lamar Jackson. Right? Starting 2018, they decide Lamar is their future. And so if we look in their recent past, they draft Zay Flowers early to get him more help and support. They got smoked by the Titans in that iconic 28-12 playoff loss years ago. Derrick Henry popped off. So what do? You can't beat them? Join them. They bring Derrick Henry over to the Ravens to supplement Lamar Jackson, make it a more balanced attack. So you have, not elite wide receivers, but you have a strong wide receiver, strong tight ends, strong running back. The offense is there for Lamar Jackson to succeed. But as I showed earlier, in the regular season, he could not get that number 2 seed. I strongly believe if he had done better in the regular season, Ravens would have been hosting the Bills. Much better chance they win that playoff game. So I know we like to isolate playoffs, regular season. Like, why do we talk about them separately? Mm-hmm. In this case, if he does a little bit better in the regular season, he makes even just one comeback drive, Ravens get, he had the Bengals drive, so I don't want to give you some, but, one of those 5 losses, he has a comeback drive. Ravens get the 2 seed, they likely move on. The Ravens are trying to put pieces around Lamar. Lamar's not able to take advantage.
Yeah, they built a really good defense the first few years with Lamar, and then a bad pass game, and so that kind of stunted his growth. And he's grown incredibly as a passer. And then Zay was awesome this year. He was the first time the Ravens have drafted a Pro Bowl receiver in their history. Defense really struggled to start the year. He kind of had to hold them afloat. And I think when you look at all the sympathy for Joe Burrow, Lamar got it done, and Burrow didn't, right? And
Sure.
then so then the back half of the year they built a great team. The games that they lost early on that might have cost them, not to mention they did beat the Bills by 25 points during the regular season, but they allowed 27 to the Chiefs, they allowed 20 something to the Raiders, they allowed 29 to the Browns. So in games that they lost outside of obviously Pittsburgh where he put up a dud, he played pretty well this season. And then it's kind of just how the cookie crumbles. Like, this is just how football works. It's not a best of 7 series. Sometimes, you just end up on the wrong side of it.
Sure, but in these cases, like, Lamar had the chance to win at the end of the game, right? It's not that the defense is playing so atrociously that they're down 20 points going into the fourth quarter. In pretty much every game this season, even the ones they lost, one score, and then the ones they won, sometimes they dominated. Like, Lamar is put in a position to succeed. It's not that the Ravens are holding him back.
Yeah,
right?
Well, I guess let me ask you. Lamar really messed up in the first half of the Bills game. But you're talking about, like, he can't come from behind. Well, he leads this 88-yard drive with his wide receiver one is I don't even know who it technically was on that drive. And then his most trusted player drops. Like, did you think it was a good throw, bad throw on the 2?
It was fine, and if it was isolated, then sure, you can go and pass. It's just happened too many times, and even in that case, still leaves a minute and a half left on the clock. Josh Allen, who's more clutch, is going to drive
But what's
down
that have to
and
do
win
with Lamar?
Yeah.
Lamar doesn't play defense.
Yeah.
Lamar Jackson will win a Super Bowl in the next 3 seasons.
It's hard to project into the future, right? Kansas City, the Chiefs model, right? 5 Super Bowl appearances in 6 years, right? They may not go back after this year. They may go back all 3 times after this year, right? What we do know is that when it comes to all these quarterbacks in the AFC, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, we're going to group them together. Only one of these guys has beaten Mahomes in the last 6 years in the playoff game. And it took a little extra time for him to do it, and he fell short in the Super Bowl, right? So when you get these opportunities, you got to make the most of these opportunities, right? Not only are we talking about a Super Bowl, but it's like we got to get it out of the AFC first, right? So until I see Lamar Jackson and the Ravens, and again, I commended you the Ravens program before, they're one of the best organizations in the NFL, period. But everything changes on a dime in the NFL, right? And it's incredibly hard to project. Maybe the Bills, give Josh Allen a 5th try. Maybe he does it. I think he's overrated too. But point being is that the Steelers were very, very good this year until they fell off in the second half of the season. They have just as good of a program as the Ravens, a great coach, Mike Tomlin, like John Harbaugh. They could always get back to the Super Bowl, right? You look at teams in the AFC West, the Broncos were very, very good. Very good defense, core pieces on defense, and a promising guy who, Bo Nix, even though he did not play well in the playoff game against Buffalo, a lot of promise. And I think he's only going to get better from here on. So you got to throw a team like the Broncos in this discussion,
So
right?
I have a quick question for you.
Yes.
Why do you have promise for Bo Nix and not Lamar Jackson?
Well, it's not that we don't have promise for Lamar Jackson.
So
We're
you do.
acknowledging
So-
that he's very good.
Okay.
But
you think
we've
he
given
could
him
improve?
We've given him one crack in the AFC Championship game against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs already.
Yeah.
And they scored 10 points.
Yeah.
In a home playoff game. They were the 1 seed years ago in that playoff game against the Titans, right? We've amply set up the Ravens multiple times with the best possible path and track to get to the Super Bowl, and they have not made the Super Bowl yet.
So you're saying
the first
we
hurdle
as
is
if you're like puppeteer.
Yes.
Who put them in that spot?
the Ravens,
Yeah.
the front office.
Like, you wouldn't say there's maybe a quarterback who wears number 8 who was a big part in getting them to the number 1 seed.
Yes.
Like, so you would acknowledge, right?
Right.
That the easiest path to a Super Bowl is getting the 1 seed. You play 2 home games,
Yes.
one against the weakest opponent, and then 1 to go to the game, right?
Right.
By the way, I just want to throw in Lamar Jackson is something like 27-2 against the NFC. So if he does get there,
If he does,
It's a
because
good-
we're now 0 for 2
sure.
with them as a 1 seed trying
for
to get
sure.
to the Super
but
Bowl.
if he gets there, you would agree they probably have a good chance in the game because on top of
Big
that,
coin flip.
but on top of that, he's also in theory kind of broken through, right? Everyone in this room, I think, agrees he's a special player and he's just come up short. So what happens if he does get to the Super Bowl?
There are a lot of other players in the NFL who are special players and have come up short.
So my point is,
There are so
you're,
many
You're
factors to
acknowledging
this.
that Lamar Jackson does a really good job of putting the Ravens in a position to get to that spot. So the question is, will he win a Super Bowl in the next 3 years? I'm saying I'll take my bet that if he continues to put them in a 1 seed, 2 seed, 3 seed over the next years and has improved every single playoff appearance, right? You mentioned 10 points in the AFC Championship 2 years ago. This year, even with 2 turnovers in the game, one then by his teammate, a third one, he still put up 25 points, and if Mark Andrews catches the ball, 27. So he's shown progress right, over this time. So you've got a quarterback who's continuing to improve in his game, and you're telling me he's going to put his team in a position to have an easy path to get there. I'll take my chances.
May I make one last point? To
Keep it
reference, in order to get there, the offensive line has to improve and the defense has to improve. Two strengths that the Ravens have always had the last 10 to 15 years are no longer strengths for them. And it's not going to get any better. So if they're going to make the Super Bowl with Lamar Jackson, it better get better because there are 4 or 5 teams in the AFC alone. We didn't even talk about the NFC. 4 or 5 teams in the AFC alone who you could project the next couple of years, the next 3 years, that could get there maybe just as much as the Ravens.
You can't go into the future expecting a different outcome when the past has already shown you, how many times he's had the opportunity to go further and couldn't. And you said, you gave an example, right? Like this last playoff game was probably the best playoff game he's ever played, especially from a passer rating. Yeah,
sure, yeah.
His last 2, every single one before that,
He's on kind of a upward slope.
Right, his last 2 were his best 2 playoff games. They lost.
Houston in the divisional round last year, but sure.
Right.
But
lost, right? Like this last game he lost, the playoff game.
yes, they lost.
So
that
even
game.
at his best playoff game he's possibly ever played in his career, they still lost. So I'm saying, like, no matter what.
That's the best playoff game. Number one, it's not the best playoff game of his career, but let's use the Bills-Ravens game. Let's say it's one of.
Right.
He hasn't gotten there yet, but he's shown improvement, even within that game as a microcosm, right? 2 turnovers in the first half. Absolutely brutal.
Right.
0 turnovers, 0 punts in the second half, scored on every drive, including a 90-yard touchdown drive. So, like, as he continues this upward trajectory, it gives me confidence that it will happen.
But even with that best game, it didn't. So if you can expect him to
but
keep
it's
playing
not
better
as-
and better, him
it's
as a
not.
single player, but the
Yeah.
team, you're
The
not
team,
getting
yeah.
there.
So I have a question for you.
Right.
Did you ever think Matt Stafford would win a Super Bowl? Because he was coined as the biggest loser in the NFL.
At what point? What do you mean? Did I ever
His
think?
entire career with the Lions, everyone's like, "Oh, he's a loser. He's a loser." Go back in time. Peyton Manning hadn't won a Super Bowl at this point in his NFL career. Did you ever think he would win a Super Bowl? Does it look a little silly now, looking back and being like, "Well, Peyton Manning"? I was the one saying Peyton Manning wouldn't win a Super Bowl.
Yeah, hindsight's 2020, and I mean for every single player ever to win a Super Bowl, hindsight's 2020. To be like, oh, I can look back and say yes, they eventually.
So
won.
all right. So then the question at hand
So if
is,
Lamar switches a team, then he can go win to the Super Bowl. But no, I don't think
Peyton,
that either.
Peyton won at the same team. But the question at hand is, do you think he'll win one in the
I
next
don't.
3 years?
I don't. I don't think he's. If you look at even career-wise, Lamar Jackson's not top 10 in anything but rushing yards, and it's because he has the most attempts, right? What'd you say? Shoot 100 shots, you'll make 30 points. He has the most attempts. Doesn't even have the highest rushing average per carry out of quarterbacks. That's still on Michael Vick. He's behind by a whole yard still. So I say Baker Mayfield has more passing yards and touchdowns than him in his entire career, and they were drafted the same year. Baker Mayfield. So if you put Baker Mayfield on the Ravens, do they win the Super Bowl?
Do you believe that in your heart?
From a statistic standpoint?
No. Like, genuinely, do you believe that? Or is it for this show?
Oh, yeah. Do I think if Baker Mayfield was on the Ravens, would they win the Super Bowl? The way he played this year? Yes. I'm going to say yes.
Respect the clock.
Okay.
Time to go.
So the prompt is, will Lamar Jackson win a Super Bowl within the next 3 years?
Yes.
You say yes.
Yeah, I actually feel pretty confident that if you gave me a bet that said yes or no, I would bet on yes.
So we've established here throughout the course of today that Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the AFC. Is Patrick Mahomes retiring in the next 3 years?
No. No.
So you don't have any inside information on that?
No.
Okay, so I think that it's silly to say that Lamar Jackson can go ahead and beat Patrick Mahomes. He can't even get past Josh Allen. My point being, and you were talking about this growth trajectory, yeah, and Lamar Jackson has had playoff games where he's had a quarterback rating of 10, another one where he's had a quarterback rating of 18. Okay, growth. I'll give you the growth mindset.
Okay.
But does that mean Patrick Mahomes isn't going to get any better over the next couple of years? Josh Allen isn't going to get any better? They're all going to be getting better.
Totally.
So how can you say that the growth trajectory of Lamar Jackson would be greater than any of the other top quarterbacks in the league?
Well, okay, it's a good question. So you mentioned a passer rating of 10, passer rating 18.
Sure.
We've never seen Patrick Mahomes play that poorly in the playoffs, right? So when you talk about kind of like how this slope could potentially meet, Mahomes can barely improve, right? He's been one of the greatest playoff quarterbacks of all time.
disagree.
And what Lamar can continue to step up is a much larger gap. So I guess that would be the answer to your question.
Well, then my follow-up would then be, okay, well, you've like everybody mentioned, you got Derrick Henry. I mean, this is the best statistical year of his career, and he still couldn't get it done. And you reference a lot in that Bills game about the Bills, and the first half was awful by Lamar Jackson, and then he rebounded in the second half. But in the first half, in the playoffs, when the lights are the brightest, he couldn't get it done. His strip sack fumble set the Bills up almost in the red zone.
Yeah.
And they never regained the lead after that. And no matter what Lamar Jackson did, he couldn't put the team in a position to go ahead and win that game.
Well, that's not true. But
no, but it is because
well, it's not, because he did put them in that position. It was just his teammate dropped the ball.
Well,
and when the drive previous, Mark Andrews fumbled, that was driving to take the lead. So, but let me answer your question. You referenced the turnovers. We've talked a lot about the turnovers.
Sure.
That's the next step for Lamar. You cannot turn the ball over in the playoffs. That's what Josh Allen does incredibly well. That's what Jalen Hurts does incredibly well.
Correct.
And of course, Patrick Mahomes. So, if you're in agreement that Lamar has improved year over year, what is the next step for him?
the next step is to not have a strip sack fumble that leads the
Agreed.
the Buffalo Bills.
Agreed.
But he
so,
but
so do
Mark,
you think he can make that step?
No,
That's the question.
No, and Mark Andrews,
Okay.
he should have never put Mark Andrews in that position to have to come up with that catch because because the 7 points were attributed to the Bills 4 plays after that strip sack fumble. That's
Okay,
it.
yeah,
Game over.
yeah.
14-7, game over.
Am I missing the strip sack fumble?
He
Didn't he run?
dropped the ball. He dropped the ball. Yeah,
okay.
they-
Definitely wasn't a strip sack
No,
fumble.
it
Anyway.
wasn't a strip sack.
Okay.
but
Drop
yeah.
the
Just seeing if I
Yeah.
missed a play.
Same thing.
Do you see things that he could tangibly improve on from year to year?
I think it's as simple as don't turn the ball over in the playoffs.
That's it?
what makes Patrick Mahomes the best quarterback in football right now. He protects the ball.
And do you think he is in a position to do that himself, or is it based on offensive line, people around
it's a
him?
good question, right? Like, you cannot control your teammates, but in the playoff games where the Ravens have come up short, 2019 Titans, did we have 7 drops in the game? Did Lamar have 500 yards? Yes, but he also turned the ball over. Against the Bills, did Mark Andrews drop the ball? Did he fumble the ball? Yes, but Lamar also had 2 turnovers. So yeah, you can't control your teammates, but I think as a team and as a leader, you kind of continue to instill that mentality, and it's got to be from him first. He's got to stop turning the ball over, and then if his teammates do it, then maybe it's out of his control.
So at what point do you say to yourself as a fan, I'm actually kind of mad at this guy, and I don't support him or as much as I did because I
Yeah.
feel like he's letting me down? We see that all across the league now. I'm a
Yeah.
Steeler fan, and Russell Wilson breaks my heart. And I've been a Steeler fan my whole life, and I hate Joe Flacco more than I hate Lamar Jackson because he's still ruining my life now, and it's been like 20 years.
Yeah.
But it's almost like, Lamar, at what point do you become a hater?
That's a good way to end it. Yeah, I don't think I'll be a Lamar Jackson hater. I mean, this might be a cop out, but like off the field and on the field, like he's just a guy
He's the
having
best
a lot of
guy.
yeah, he's just
He's
a
the
good
best guy.
So it would be tough to like hate on him. He's had nothing, besides selling some faulty gym equipment, maybe. No, I can't imagine myself being a Lamar hater.
That'll do it for this episode of Fan vs. Hater, Lamar Jackson edition. In the comments, let us know who you think got the victory, and let us know who you want us to hate on next.